I'm telling you, man, the moment that black SUV, the one with windows so dark you couldn't tell if there were 4 people or 40 inside, pulled up to the curb, everything came to a standstill. Not just the kids playing kickball in the dirt, but the entire block. People around here are used to seeing ambulances and police, not a 2-car motorcade dropping off real celebrities. This wasn't just a quick photo opportunity for a charity event, you know what I mean? This was Kendrick Lamar and SZA arriving deep into the heart of the city, stepping out as if they were above the rest of us, but still wanting to connect. They were at the Haven, an old, run-down orphanage that seemed like the city had forgotten about ages ago. It had a smell of bleach and old floor wax, and the walls were a depressing pale green that hadn't been painted since the 90s. But when they opened the trunk, honestly, it felt like Christmas morning. By the way, welcome to Celebrity Hip Hop Showroom, where hip hop and celebrity drama never sleep, so hit that subscribe button so you never miss the mess. Let's get into it. They weren't just bringing toys, they had industrial-sized boxes of everything. Canned goods stacked high, school supplies that looked brand new and expensive, and sneakers, hundreds of pairs, still in the tissue paper. That's when you knew this was different. This wasn't a check and a handshake, this was a resupply mission. The security guys, big dudes, moved like shadows, unloading the goods. Kendrick, he steps out, dressed simple, hoodie, jeans, baseball cap pulled low. He wasn't flashing ice or nothing, but the energy around him, the quiet power, was louder than any diamond chain. SZA followed, all natural grace, wearing some flowy gear, moving slow and deliberate like she was trying not to spook the wildlife. The kids, at first, they were like statues, wide-eyed, just staring at these 2 legends who usually only exist on their worn-out phone screens. They've been let down too many times by promises and visitors who treat them like props. But Kendrick, he didn't rush it. He let the silence sit there for a minute, respected the space, you know? Then he does the thing that changes the whole script. He ignores the camera phones and the staff running around, and he walks straight over to this one little girl, maybe 7 years old, sitting alone on the steps, holding a paperback with the cover torn off. He just kneels down, easy as that. No big dramatic gesture, just getting low, meeting her at eye level. And he asks her, real low, "What you readin' there?" She looks up, her eyes huge, like 2 dark coins. She mumbles something about the book, something about a magic tree. And Kendrick, he doesn't just nod, he actually engages. He tells her about his favorite book when he was a kid, how it wasn't about the heroes, but about the side character who was always quiet but always watching. He wasn't talking down to her, he was talking with her, sharing a secret. And the whole time, his team is moving mountains of supplies behind him, but he's right there, locked in. That's when the tension broke. The other kids, seeing the king kneel, they started to creep closer, drawn in by the pure, unforced warmth of the moment. It was a raw display of humanity that cut through all the celebrity noise, and it made you wonder, what was the real story with this little girl? It felt like he was searching for something specific in that small exchange, something that wasn't about fame or music. Meanwhile, SZA was in the kitchen, and let me tell you, that kitchen was a battlefield. Old stoves, cracked tile, and the smell of sadness mixed with stale cooking oil. The staff here, they're heroes, but they were running on fumes. She wasn't posing for a pic with a can of beans. She was getting the layout, helping the main kitchen lady, a powerhouse named Ms. Evelyn, who looked like she hadn't slept in a week. SZA was moving boxes, sorting the refrigerated stuff from the dry goods. She was efficient, quiet, and her gentleness was like a cool breeze in that hot, stressful room. But here's the kicker, the detail that got me. As she was stacking crates of fresh produce, she noticed a corner of the pantry. It was spotless, almost obsessively clean, but totally bare. Every other shelf was groaning under the weight of the new donations, but this one section was empty, like someone had been ordered to clear it out fast before they arrived. When she asked Ms. Evelyn about it, the old woman just coughed, adjusted her apron, and mumbled something about routine cleaning. But her eyes flickered. They did, and they gave up the lie before her mouth could even finish the sentence. SZA didn't push it, didn't make a fuss, but you could see that subtle shift in her demeanor, that gentle curiosity turning into a quiet, focused investigation. She knew that empty shelf was telling a story the orphanage didn't want the world to hear. The air shifted from generous relief to something heavier. The kids were laughing now, the grateful noise filling the rooms, a distraction. But the man in charge, the director, Mr. Sterling, he was pacing a little too fast, smiling a little too wide. His suit looked expensive, a little too tailored for the setting. He kept trying to steer Kendrick away from the children and towards a prepared speech, or a wall with a plaque he could stand next to. Kendrick wasn't having it. He kept moving through the halls, his eyes constantly scanning, not the kids' faces, but the architecture, the locks on the doors, the way the staff interacted when they thought the cameras weren't rolling. When Kendrick finally broke away from the girl, he passed Mr. Sterling in the hallway, and he didn't even slow down, he just murmured a quick question, almost too fast to catch. The little girl on the steps, what's her last name? Sterling stuttered, the smile cracking for a split second. All our children are registered under a common protective surname for privacy, Mr. Lamar. That was the official answer, the easy out. But the delay, the sheer nervousness in the director's voice, suggested something more complex, something tied up in paperwork and secrets that extended way past the haven's four walls. Then came the moment that really twisted the knife. One of Kendrick's security guys, a former detective from his old neighborhood named Mike, pulls Kendrick into an empty stairwell away from the noise. Mike's face is tight. He whispers, his voice barely audible over the sound of basketballs bouncing outside. "Boss, I ran the plate on that van parked out back. The one with the broken taillight that's been sitting there since we arrived. It's not registered to the orphanage. It's flagged. Not for crime, but for consistent movement between here and an address downtown. A known holding company. It doesn't smell right, man. The books, they look thin." Kendrick didn't even react physically. He just tilted his head, acknowledging the information, absorbing it like a dry sponge. His face, usually a map of intense focus, just went utterly blank, which, if you know him, is when he's processing the most dangerous information. The whole donation thing, the charity stop, it was a perfectly executed cover story. They weren't here to give. They were here to investigate, using the cover of generosity to get a look behind the curtain. The tension was so thick you could taste it, knowing that two of the biggest stars in the world were now neck-deep in something shady involving a children's home. SZA, still in the kitchen, wasn't letting that empty shelf go. She moved discreetly. While Ms. Evelyn was distracted organizing the mountain of new frozen meat, SZA leaned into the pantry. She didn't look for documents. She looked for signs. Dust patterns. She noticed that the shelf was clean, yes, but the wall directly behind it wasn't. There were faint vertical scratch marks, too regular to be accidental damage. It suggested something heavy and tall had been stored there, not just empty space. Something maybe like a filing cabinet or a safe. She reached up, touching the paint, and her fingers came away with a faint smudge of what looked like white powder, but she couldn't be sure. It was gone a second later, wiped clean. She straightened up, feeling the eyes of the young kitchen assistant, a quiet teen named Leo, burning into the back of her head. He was watching her, not with hostility, but with a desperate kind of pleading. He wanted to talk, but couldn't. Kendrick came back into the main room, his demeanor unchanged, still cool and collected. He went straight to the playroom, where the air was full of chaos and joy. He sat on the floor, playing a simple card game with a couple of boys. It was an Oscar-worthy performance of genuine calm. But when one of the boys knocked over the card tower, Kendrick used the distraction, bending low to pick up the cards, to catch Leo's eye. The teen from the kitchen was now hovering near the door, bussing imaginary dishes. In the few seconds their eyes met, Kendrick didn't speak. He just slightly, almost imperceptibly, pointed his chin towards the far corner of the room where a beat-up old bookshelf stood. Leo nodded back, a flicker of understanding, and then disappeared back into the kitchen. The message was passed without a word, a silent street communication that cut through the noise. "I see you. You know something. Go to the drop spot." The clock was ticking. Their team was wrapping up the distribution, the press guys were getting their final shots, and Mr. Sterling was getting more relaxed, thinking he had managed the situation. He started telling Kendrick about the budget shortfalls, the usual dance. Kendrick listened, nodding slowly, keeping him occupied. Meanwhile, SZA was making her way to the far corner bookshelf, pretending to admire the spine of a ridiculously out-of-place hardback copy of Moby Dick. The bookshelf was packed tight, dusty, definitely not a spot for routine cleaning. As she ran her hand along the titles, she felt a small, hard object taped underneath the bottom shelf. Fast as lightning, using her sleeve to obscure the motion, she pulled it off. It wasn't a note or a key. It was a single, small, tarnished silver earring, the kind you'd see a kid get from a mall kiosk. It was cheap, but it felt significant, heavy with meaning. A marker, a signal, maybe belonging to the little girl on the steps, maybe to someone who used to be there. Back in the main hall, Kendrick was standing up, making his gracious thank yous to the staff. It was time to go. He made eye contact with Mr. Sterling and his tone shifted, slightly deeper, a little harder, but still masked by polite professionalism. "Mr. Sterling," Kendrick said, loud enough for a couple of other staff members to hear, "the generosity here is clear. But when we get back, my foundation will be calling your board of directors. We're not just sending money, we're sending auditors. We want to make sure every single penny gets to these children. And that includes reviewing the entire intake and record system. You understand? Transparency is key to a long-term partnership." The shift in the room was palpable. Sterling's face went from pale to a dangerous flush. The smile was gone. He knew this wasn't a request, it was an order and a threat. This simple, innocent charity visit had just become a federal inquiry, and he was cornered. He had no choice but to agree, his voice strained as he promised full cooperation. As they walked back to the SUVs, the kids were running alongside, waving goodbye, finally showing their full, unrestrained gratitude. It was a beautiful, heartbreaking scene. But the true drama was happening between the lines. SZA gave Kendrick a look, a shared glance that said, "I found something." He gave a small, almost imperceptible nod back. They didn't need to speak a word. They were a team, moving in silence, gathering clues. Kendrick paused before getting into the car, his gaze sweeping over the whole building, that classic, intense stare of his. He looked right past the windows, past the kids, past the director standing stiffly at the entrance, and focused on the broken taillight of that mysterious van in the back. That van was the loose thread, and they had just yanked it. He ducked into the vehicle, the door closing with a heavy, final thud that felt like a period at the end of a very sharp sentence. The black SUVs pulled away, slowly at first, then accelerating into the stream of traffic, leaving the noise of the children behind. But the silence inside the car was louder than any music. Kendrick broke it, his voice low and gravelly. "That earring, who's it for?" SZA pulled the tiny silver object from her palm. "I don't know, but it was taped right where Leo said something important was hidden before they cleaned it out. And Mike, that girl on the steps, the one I spoke to, did you get her full name?" Mike, driving the lead car, looked into the rearview mirror. "Yeah, boss." I pulled the initial intake file discreetly. "Her name's Luna Vasquez. But there's a problem. Her file says she was legally moved to a different foster location 3 months ago. She shouldn't be here." That was the shocking detail, the final piece of the puzzle that turned a generous act into a full-blown crisis. Why was a legally transferred child still being kept at the Haven? Who was Luna Vasquez, and what was Mr. Sterling hiding in that now empty pantry corner? The simple visit was over, but the real story, the one that started with a quiet question about a book, was just getting started, rolling out onto the streets now, where the game changes and the stakes are life and death. The drive back wasn't a return to safety, it was the start of the hunt, and they knew, straight up, they were about to expose something far uglier than just cooked books. Luna was the key, and they were the only ones who knew she was locked in the wrong cage. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this situation, so please share your opinions in the comments. Also, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications to stay updated on this story.